paradox we are about to explore is called the first-person illusion. It begins with perspective, a quiet certainty that your consciousness is the center, the anchor point around which everything else orbits. This sense of I, so intimate and immediate, feels like an unshakable truth because it is the only one you can directly experience. Yet this very feeling conceals a deeper mystery. Though you are certain of your own viewpoint, every other person, unknown and familiar alike, holds the same certainty for themselves. Each mind is a solitary sun, glowing with awareness, shining from its own unique place in the universe. How can so many be the star of the story when there is only one stage on which all unfold? In this quiet tension, a vast philosophical question stirs softly beneath daily life. How can each of us feel like the undeniable center when the world we inhabit is shared, singular? This paradox invites us to ponder the nature of consciousness, that luminous point shimmering behind our eyes. Is the I an individual flame, or a reflection caught in a web of other fires? It is a riddle of existence, where each perspective seems whole and absolute, yet coexists with countless others that feel equally real. This insight stretches beyond thought, touching the tender edge where self and other begin to blur, and we glimpse the fragile architecture of the mind stage. Consider Daniel, a man drifting into twilight, alone in a dimly lit room filled with the soft ticking of an old clock and the faint scent of worn leather. He is caught in the silent embrace of the first-person illusion, feeling intensely centered in his own experience. As he sits still, shadows playing over his face, Daniel senses deeply the pull of his own I. His memories, pains, and thoughts revolve around this fragile core. Yet, beneath this feeling lies a whispered question, an unspoken awareness that every person he has ever met, every stranger passing by, feels this same centering in their own worlds. Daniel wonders, quietly and with a trace of melancholy, what it truly means to be the self he so earnestly believes himself to be. Daniel's story unfolds in the solitude of an evening where time seems stretched thin. He feels the weight of his existence gently pressing against the window pane of consciousness. Each memory flickers like candlelight, fragile and fleeting, painting the contours of who he thinks he is. Yet loneliness seeps in, born not from absence of others, but from the silent gulf between his own awareness and the unknowable minds that surround him. He sits surrounded by objects steeped in memory, an open journal, a half-drunk cup of tea, and tries to grasp the shape of his identity. The paradox tugs quietly at him. What if the I he inhabits is less a solitary beacon and more a shadow cast by countless other lights? The tension of the paradox grows as Daniel faces the invisible boundaries of his own mind. Each moment of thought reveals the limits of his perspective, the tight circle sealed by the illusion of singularity. He watches life pass in fleeting glimpses from the corner of his eye, knowing each person around him carries their own inner universe just as vivid and complex. He wonders why his own fears and aspirations eclipse those of others, making them appear as mere background noise. The walls of his mind feel both protective and isolating. He longs to step beyond the confines of his self, but finds no door. The first-person illusion, once comforting, becomes a silent prison of wonder and melancholy. Daniel's struggle deepens as he contemplates the fluid nature of identity itself. He imagines if parts of himself, memories, thoughts, feelings, were altered or lost, how profoundly his sense of I would shift. This raises an unsettling thought. If the self is fragile and changeable, where does the true observer hide? In moments of quiet reflection, the center begins to dissolve, revealing layers upon layers of experience intertwined with time and memory. The paradox becomes not just a puzzle about perspective, but a question of existence. How much of the self is stable, and how much is drifting, refracted through the prism of consciousness itself? A slow shift comes over Daniel as he lowers his gaze and breathes with the soft pulse of the room. He imagines looking out through the eyes of another, someone whose fears might roar louder, whose dreams might paint the darkness more vividly. In this subtle exercise, the edges of his own identity blur gently. The walls between selves, once unbreakable, become translucent. Daniel senses that the feeling of I is less a unique throne and more a seat that consciousness occupies wherever it finds a resting place. This new understanding dissolves division and invites a tender humility, the kind that softens isolation without erasing selfhood. Daniel's thoughts unfold into a quiet acceptance. The idea that each person, equally radiant in awareness, lives within their own first-person illusion no longer feels like a challenge to his identity. Instead, it becomes a shared melody humming beneath existence. The paradox reveals a grace. The center is everywhere and nowhere at once, a delicate dance of perspectives that overlap and diverge like shadows in candlelight. Daniel embraces the unknown comfort found in this complexity, recognizing that the space between selves holds the truest reflection of our human experience, entwined, mysterious, and beautiful in its uncertainty. As your own eyes close and breath settles into gentle rhythm, consider the quiet question at the heart of this paradox. If everyone feels like the center of their own universe, then who truly inhabits that center? Is the I you know the only one, or one among infinite others, each as vivid and certain? Could it be that the self is a shared secret whispered between countless points of view, a silent song heard through many voices? In this soft hush between waking and dreaming, might you glimpse the delicate truth that our separateness is an illusion, and that awareness itself is the true unbound center of everything?